Hey everyone, my name is Matt. Welcome to my backyard. This time we're going to be cutting up some little chunks of walnut on my big homemade bandsaw mill back there. So I have two pieces of walnut. I have the main trunk of the tree as well as the main crotch section. So this is kind of an interesting example of, I guess, traditional logging in a sense, because traditionally this section up here with all the crotch and stuff, which you usually see still attached in the logs that I saw, has been removed. Because traditionally that's the waste part, and the only part of the tree I actually care about is the main trunk, which is this whole section here. So this is about 5 feet long and maybe about 2 feet in diameter, somewhere around there. This just happened to be being cut up for removal from a yard. It was a yard tree, so it wasn't really cut up with the intention of separating these two pieces for a saw log and a waste piece, but that's just how it happened. So I thought it's interesting to point out the difference in the traditional sense of a saw log versus what stuff that I usually saw myself. So I'm going to saw these for my own future projects, and the main section down here I'm going to saw for thick leg stock or just thicker stock in general. So we're going to try and pull as much 16-quarter rift sawn stock out of here as possible so that I can get as many rift sawn leg blanks out of this log as possible for any foreseeable project down the road. And we'll get into talking a little bit about rift sawn orientation in a slab like this, and then the smaller section which has a bunch of crotches, I'll just saw that into some slabs, and those can be used for whatever accent pieces in the future. So as I was loading these up, I was talking to the homeowners, and they're asking me if there was really any value in these yard trees, and I told them that most of the time not really, because not a whole lot of people are going to want to saw them and use them because they typically have embedded metal objects in them, and they seemed a little surprised by that. But I told them that, you know, people like to nail stuff to trees over the years and screw things and use them as poles and stuff, and I guess that made sense. And here we are, pulling out nails. Oh! So you got stuff like that in trees, and then looks like there's another one over here. So I fully expect that there are more things inside this tree. So with those two nails out of there, I don't see any more at the moment. So let's go ahead and get this first section off the trailer and onto the mill. So I'm getting the first cut set, and I'm going to come in right, kind of like right where the bark starts, just to get a really simple small board out of there. So kind of just removing this piece, and then I got a small board out of there. So once I figure out where that cut roughly is, I can bring the saw height to, you know, roughly where it needs to be. So in my case right now, I want my first cut to be around 23 inches. But if I want to get a board as well, I can use the 4/4 scale on this side. So I can start my cut here at the 19 4/4 spot, make that cut, and I can come down and make a 4/4 board just by coming down to 18. Now it's not necessarily going to be the best board. It's going to be mostly all sapwood, which could be interesting for something, but as far as what I'm going for here, it's not really all that necessary. But turning this part into a board now just means less firewood for later. So I decided to pull a second board off of here, because as I was getting through the first one, it really looked like that was just going to be mostly all sap anyway, so I figured I might as well pull a second board off of there. This is, you know, starting to get into the heartwood, or the good stuff that I'm actually interested in this particular case. You see, I only have this much actual firewood to get rid of, which is kind of nice. So I'm going to set these boards aside, roll this thing over, and basically do the same thing on the other side. So if I wanted to make edge boards, this is kind of where I would stop, but since I'm going to leave the live edge on for now to give myself some more possibilities for the future, I keep rolling 180 degrees. All right, so once again, we got a pretty scrawny piece of firewood. A lot of just sapwood and stuff, so that can get tossed aside. There's our one board. Mostly all sapwood. We're starting to get into some heartwood, so some cool sapwood accent wood, I guess. So I've already started to lay out the cuts for the rest of the log. Let's take a look at that. So I've taken the time to just lay this out so it's easier to see. So right here I have the pith, which is the center of the tree, and that is within a 1/2 inch of the pith coming out the other end. So I'm going to keep that in mind as I'm laying things out. So I have this dotted line here, which represents the actual center of the log. Now up from here, I drew a line that's 2 inches up, which is going to be the start of where I think the best kind of riffs on area is going to be. And then up here, that's 4 inches, so that's my actual top cut of this main slab, which is what I'm really going for. And the same thing will be symmetrical down here. So as you can see, the growth rings kind of curve in this direction here, and what we want for riffs on stock is for the grain to enter and exit at one corner of the square stock. So if you take a look at this, if I were to make a cut here, and establish that as a leg blank, see the grain kind of enters and exits at the corners, which is going to give us a straight grain look on all 4 sides of that leg stock. And to better visualize that, consider these 2 pieces of square stock. This one here is rift sawn, and this one here is either plain or quarter sawn, depending on the orientation. You can see the growth rings are pretty much parallel or perpendicular to one of the faces. In this case, they're at 45. So if we take a look at this and we start rotating through all 4 sides, you can see that we have pretty well straight grain all the way around all 4 sides. That's in contrast to something like this, where you're going to have a quarter sawn face, so straight grain, possibly with some ray fleck depending on the species. Then you rotate it and you got a crazy grain pattern. You have your cathedrals. Rotate it again, you're back to quarter sawn. There's a little bit of ray fleck over here in this corner on this piece of maple. And then once again, you have a cathedral grain or a crazier grain. So as far as leg stock goes, or something where you're going to see all 4 sides, it's just generally a little more pleasing to the eye to have something that is riffs on, so that it's not so busy and then plain on one of the faces and kind of alternating around. Just makes things match just a little bit nicer and just be more visually pleasing in a traditional sense. So now thinking about our big thick stock down here, we can use a little window like this to actually see where the grain's going to go. But what the nice thing here is, if you kind of come out here where the grain might not be doing exactly what you want, this is a 3.5 inch square. So this is roughly what this will finish out with after it's dried. But if you want to do something a little bit smaller, like a 3x3, and you have a 4 inch thick piece of stock, you can rotate the leg blank inside of that stock and saw it at an angle later on and get exactly the grain orientation that you want. So having this thicker stock not only gives you the opportunity to do, your single big best cuts at the full thickness, but also gives the opportunity to rotate these things into whatever orientation works best for your project. And if you look down here, we're going to have this big quarter sawn slab. We can either leave that as a big piece of quarter sawn stock and resaw it for whatever, or we can continue to rotate our blank within there and adjust the grain so that it is actually riffs on. So through here, the growth rings are kind of running more like that. So fairly much vertical. So if you orient a leg blank diagonally, like a diamond through here, that gives you a perfectly riffs on piece as well. So I'll pull my 16/4 here, 16/4 here, and I'll have another piece of 16/4 down there. And I'll be able to mix and match either a 3.5 inch leg blank or rotate things around and get a 3 inch leg blank out of those 3 slabs. So that's just a little bit about grain orientation. I did do a video several years ago that goes into this in more detail, and I'll leave you a link to that if you're interested in learning more about how different cuts give you different grain orientations or different grain patterns on the face of your boards. But with all that out of the way, it's just going to be mostly sawing from this point. So I'm going to go ahead and just start cutting, and we'll get the last cuts made to make all of these slabs. And that'll be it for this one, I guess. Don't tell anyone that I have a hose. That's just between you and me. So this turned out to be really nice and really beautiful. There's some great color in these slabs, and I'm looking forward to making something with these someday. A little bit of figure down in here. Now in this case, I'm not too concerned with having a figure in these things since they're going to be cut into blanks later on, but you can still appreciate it. So one thing I want to mention about this slab here is that this is the center cut, so I do have the pith, which is the weakest part of the tree or the least stable part of the tree. You're going to see some cracking forming around here. Now ideally what would happen is you would cut this apart so you don't end up with cracks that kind of permeate out through the thickness, which would be kind of devastating for the use case of this. Now this stuff's been sitting out for a little while now. It's been a couple of weeks, so I wanted to see where it was going to start to crack just to kind of show things. And it looks like I'm getting a crack along where the center of the tree is all the way down on the face here, which is good. What I don't want again is for the crack to come out from the middle and start traveling up to the thickness like that, because then you'd have a crack like in the middle of your leg blank. I wanted to leave these whole because you can see the center of the tree curves. So in order for me to cut that out of there with the bandsaw, for instance, I'd be cutting straight through and not at the crazy angle that this thing is at. So leaving it like this just gives me some possibilities for later on. So this one here is going to be one of the riffs on sections. And just to give you an idea, table leg is going to be 30 inches or less. So that's only about that long. So this will give you two separate chunks so you can get table legs out of. And that will allow you to account for the curvature in the log. So you can have one leg coming out in this direction and one coming in more of this direction without any huge problem. Now for something longer, let's say you're doing a tall table, you got 36. So there's plenty of material here to get a lot of individual blanks out of. Now these could be cut into square stock and dried like that, but I like to leave things kind of whole and big. That way I can not really pigeonhole myself into having these just for leg blanks. If I wanted to use these for goose-neck moldings, for instance, I needed extra width just in case. So just having the stock oversized allows me to put off the decision making until I actually have a project in mind for these things. And like this, I only have 4 big slabs to deal with versus like 20 leg blanks, which is more stuff to move around. So I have been racking my brain as to how exactly I want to cut this guy, since there are essentially 3 planes we can cut this in to expose some crotch figure. Trying to get it all is not really going to be possible, so we either have this plane, that plane, or this plane. I'm kind of leaning towards this plane here because these are the 2 biggest limbs, which should produce the most figure in theory, and it's also kind of more of a square kind of shape, which I guess the shape isn't too concerning to me. So I'm just looking for some figure for, I don't know, whatever. But something like this might be cool too. But the bigger limb feels like it's the right way to go. On the bottom side, if you go that way, you're gonna have a kind of odd shape with a big U and then the limbs. So that might not be the most practical, but this would be cool too. The only thing is this limb isn't as big as the other one. So yeah, I'm thinking, oh, I don't know. This is such a hard decision. Once you cut it, you're kind of stuck. Okay, I think I've made up my mind. We'll see. I'm gonna go with this orientation here, so I'm gonna roll this thing over 180 degrees and get it on the bed like that. Okay, I have this thing positioned where I want it, and I think I'm ready to make a cut. So what I'll do is just come in right here and skim right through here, and that should give me a nice flat area, and then I can roll this thing over and have it sitting flat on the bed, because it's kind of kind of goofy right now. It should be all right to get this first cut made and kind of go from there, I guess. So I totally forgot about the top height of this cut, so I guess I will just trim this off real quick with a chainsaw. So one question I get quite a bit has to do with the blade, and how is it that you're able to cut through a log or through a stack of slabs or whatever without the weight above the blade pinching it? One thing you have to remember about these bandsaw blades is that the teeth are cutting a wider path than the band. You can see on these, the teeth are bent in opposite directions, so this is going to create a wider curve. So if I take a feeler gauge and I shove it in here, I can very easily get this feeler gauge in here because there is space between the wood and the body of the band. The body of the band is never in contact with the actual wood unless the saw is drifting for some reason. But otherwise, the body of the band is simply floating in the kerf that is being cut by the teeth ahead of it. The only time the band's ever going to get grabbed by the slab or anything above it is when you're exiting the cut and the material in the front of the blade stops supporting it and the weight of the stack drops onto the band. But that doesn't really happen super often. There's always some kind of movement in the wood as you're cutting it, so very rarely is it ever even noticeable that the stack is trying to grab the blade as you're exiting the cut. All right, I am all set to go. So I have these little stops in here, which works really well for weird shaped stuff. You don't have to worry about trying to get it all up against the main stops over here on the side, although these bolts are a little small for that, but they're not gonna go anywhere. And I've got the offcut stacked over there next to this one, so I'll be able to cut that one at the same time as the main one. So now it's just gonna be a matter of slicing and, not dicing, just slicing. There's gonna be no dicing involved. But just a little bit of mindless, repeated cuts. Here we go. Okie dokie. Let's start digging. See what we got. First few are probably gonna be a little bit on the boring side. Yep, just wood. Ooh. Crotchy. Oh. Yes. I like that. There's a lot of crotch. Look at all this crotch figure. Look at that. That is a lot of crotch figure. Yeah, like 18 inches or so. That's not bad. Oh, that's pretty beautiful. I was sort of expecting they had a nail or something in here since we found some on the outside, but yeah, I don't think so. This is cool. It's got the bullseye thing going on there. Ooh, ooh. Let's see what we got going on here. Got some kind of fun cookie type things. Little oval. It's pretty cool. Ooh, I like that. Ooh. These are cool. These are getting kind of cool. Ooh. That is cool too. It's all cool. All right, let's take a look at these guys. Ho. Splish splash. So that was the first one that was cut. There's the second one. There's the third one, getting more into some crotch figure. And then I think this one and the last one probably have the most amount of crotch figure. Then we start getting away from it. We're starting to see the other limb that was coming up this way coming through. So you get a little bit of figure from this guy coming that way too, which is pretty nice still. And that's the last one where you have most of the bullseye from the other limb, and the crotch figure from the other two limbs has pretty much disappeared. All right, let's see these ovals got going on. Ooh. So this one's got a little bit of a bark inclusion here, which is pretty nice. And you can see some pretty significant figure coming through there. Nice. This one's really cool because you're getting some of that figure there as well as the kind of bullseye cookie shape thing going on there too. And then as we keep going, we're losing this figure from the other limbs and getting just into the figure from the crosscut on this limb here. So you can see a little bit left right there. Now it's totally gone and gone even more. So there is the walnut all stacked to dry. I still have to stack those sections of crotch, but I'll do that at some point. I stacked the original log from the other video I did on grain orientation on top of it. This was cut like 4.5 years ago. That's when I made that video. So this has been out here for a long time. This should be pretty well dried by now. But it's not like I have any projects in mind for this right now. With this stuff, it's all about getting it cut, getting it dried, and getting it kind of in inventory so that you have it for the day you finally have a project that requires your big old thick stock such as this. So hopefully you enjoyed the process of doing a little sawing with some forethought into some future projects that you might have in mind, and all of that good stuff. So thank you as always for watching. I greatly appreciate it. If you have any questions on stacked bools, the sawmill, anything back in the shop, please feel free to leave me a comment. As always, I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. And until next time, happy woodworking.